Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giriparadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giriparadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giriparadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giriparadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Jai Vishvad Paramahansa Parivrajacharis Tadastasisnat, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Sri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Gopremanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 2. Daksha curses Lord Shiva. Text 33. Maitreya Uvacha Tasyaivam Vadata Shapam Brigo Sa Bhagavan Bhava Nishchakrama Tata Kinchid Vimana Eva Sanuga Maitreya Uvacha Tasyavam Vadata Shapam Brigosa Bhagavan Bhava Nishchakrama Tatakin Ched Vimana Eva Sanuga Maitreya Uvacha Tasyavam Vadata Shapam Brigosa Bhagavan Bhava Nishchakrama Tatakin Ched Vimana Eva Sanuga Maitreya Uvacha Tasyavam Vadata Shapam Brigosa Bhagavan Bhava Nishchakrama Tatakin Ched Vimana Eva Sanuga.
Tasyevam vadata shapam Vigosha Bhagavan Bhavar Nishkrama tata kinchit Vimana iva sanuga
Maitreya Uvacha Tasyevam vadata sapam Vrigosa Bhagavan Bhavaha Nishchakrama tata kinchit Vimana iva sanugaha
Sevam vadata shapam Vigasa Bhagavan Nishchakrama tata kinchit Vimana iva sanuga Vacha Sevam vadata shapam Vigasa Bhagavan Nishchakrama tata kinchit Vimana iva sanuga. Maitreya Uvacha. Maitreya said, Tasya, of him, evam, thus, vadata, being spoken, shapam, curse, brigo, of Brigu, sa, he, Bhagavan, the possessor of all opulences, Bhava, Lord Shiva, Nishchakrama, went, tata, from there, kinchit, somewhat, vimana, morose, eva, as, saanuga, followed by his disciples. Translation. The sage Maitreya said, when such cursing and counter-cursing was going on between Lord Shiva's followers and the parties of Daksha and Brigu, Lord Shiva became very morose. Not saying anything, he left the arena of the sacrifice, followed by his disciples. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, Lord Shiva's excellent character is described. In spite of the cursing and counter-cursing between the parties of Daksha and Shiva, because he is the greatest Vaishnav, he was so sober that he did not say anything. A Vaishnav is always tolerant, and Lord Shiva is considered the topmost Vaishnav. So his character, as shown in this scene, is excellent. He became morose because he knew that these people, both his men and Daksha's, were unnecessarily cursing and counter-cursing one another without any interest in spiritual life. From his point of view, he did not see anyone as lower or higher because he is a Vaishnav, as stated in Bhagavad Gita chapter 5 verse 18. Pandita Samadarshana. One who is perfectly learned does not see anyone as lesser or greater because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Thus the only alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his follower Nandishvara as well as Bhrigu Muni from cursing and counter-cursing in that way. Maitreya Rivacha Tasyavam Vadata Shapam Brigosa Bhagavan Bhava Nishchakrama Itata Kinchid Vimana Ivasaniga. The sage Maitreya said, when such cursing and counter-cursing was going on between Lord Shiva's followers and the parties of Daksha and Bhrigu, Lord Shiva became very morose. Not saying anything, he left the arena of the sacrifice, followed by his disciples. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yes, so here we see very clearly the the glorious level, more elevated level of Lord Shiva, and how he responds to this very horrible situations, really disastrous. He responds in a certain way, in this way, silently leaving the place, as Prabhupada says, because he's a Vaishnav. Vaishnavs are always tolerant, and Lord Shiva is considered the topmost Vaishnav. So, therefore, he's the most tolerant, and he's never getting drawn into these materialistic situations of material emotions and losing control of oneself, and in that way doing some wrong thing. Lord Shiva basically never really does any wrong thing. The nature of a Vaishnava is like that because the Vaishnava is deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then the Vaishnava, the devotee, is always in touch with Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna is always in touch with the devotee. In touch means in very profound ways, not just some sort of abstraction or something like that. As the Lord tells Devasa Muni in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sadhavo hridayam mayam sadhunam hridayam twaham madanyate na jananti naham tebyo managapi. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I'm always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. This is a very profound verse, very amazing and wonderful verse, that the devotees, they're always in touch with Krishna, in communion with Krishna, and therefore they're always inspired by Krishna. And not just inspired, but they're always being, or regularly, or always being instructed by Krishna from within through different types of inspirations and stimuli coming in different ways. They can always see, feel, and appreciate the presence of the Lord at every moment. Just like we're told that one devotee asked Prabhupada one time, do you know everything? And Srila Prabhupada replied, no, I don't, but Krishna does, and he tells me. So, what sort of situation is that? That's just something way, way beyond the position of even the most intelligent and brilliant and, clear thinking of all the non-devotees. There's just completely a different dimension even. You can't even really say it's just a dimension of understanding. It's being situated in a relationship with Krishna. And because the elevated devotee is so dear to Krishna, then whatever the devotee needs, wants, but particularly needs, in the way of knowledge, in the way of insight, in the way of understanding, Lord Krishna provides. And beyond that, just in the way of different material facilities, all these things are supplied by Krishna very suitably. And therefore, we mentioned not long ago, a few weeks ago or something, that you'll find in the at the end of the 2nd canto, or towards the end of the 2nd canto, well, there's a whole situation there in which Narada Muni, who's the son of one of the sons of Lord Brahma, he has become a little confused, because he always thought that his father, Lord Brahma, was the supreme, and that there was no one beyond his father. And, well, yes, like that, his father was the supreme. But then he saw that his father, Lord Brahma, was, from time to time, he was praying to someone higher, Because, generally you'll only pray to someone who is higher than you. So he saw his father, Lord Brahma, was praying to someone, and he asked that, who are you praying to? Why are you praying? I always understood that you were the supreme. I'm trying to find the verse, but you know what it's like sometimes. Yes, so then Lord Brahma explained that actually I'm not the supreme, that there's someone higher, there's Lord Krishna, he's higher than me. And but I am his devotee, and therefore he helps me in so many ways. And then Lord Brahma told Narada Muni that therefore, because I'm always being helped by the Lord and inspired by the Lord, Lord Brahma said that therefore, whatever I say becomes true, happens. Any prediction or any sort of foresight, insight that he gets, it always happens like that. That because of his relationship with Krishna, whatever he says becomes true. Whatever he desires, he gets. This is a very amazing position, but this is the position of the pure devotees. Of course, this term pure devotee can be used in different ways, sort of from different angles of vision, you might say. But when we talk about the most elevated devotees, like Lord Shiva, who's being focused on here, then because of their relationship with Lord Krishna, then, it becomes like that. That whatever they say becomes true, whatever they desire they get, and whatever happens, they can see that it's the mercy of the Lord. This is a very important part of advancing in Krishna consciousness, at least this one part that we just mentioned, that we as aspiring devotees, as long as we are actually trying our best to remain fixed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, and as long as we're not letting our minds sort of betray us or mislead us or delude us or something of those sorts, then as long as we're really actually making our best effort to remain properly Krishna conscious, then we can understand, we should accept that whatever happens to us is simply happening by the will of the Lord for our betterment in Krishna consciousness. Yes, so even for devotees who are really serious to progress like that, then it's a fact. Whatever happens is happening under the direction of Krishna for the betterment of the devotee. Even sometimes the devotee may have a test. And, when we talk about test, we mean a test, an actual test. What for one devotee may just not be a test. It may just be something easy to deal with due to their further progress in Krishna consciousness. For another devotee, may be just a very challenging event in their life, and they have to just hold on and pray and just somehow or other stick at it, not to get swept away. I remember I mentioned this before, and I'm sure you remember. When I was a new devotee, I'd been a devotee, like, I don't know, a week or maybe two. I was made the pot washer. Very, merciful service, cleaning the heart, cleaning Krishna's pots and cleaning the heart at the same time. But, without going into the details which I've mentioned before, it was such a job that, even though I was just really going for it, I couldn't keep up with the supply of dirty pots, really, and big ones. Gee whiz. So they gave me an assistant. Now I had been a devotee a bit longer. I was a more experienced devotee. I'd been a devotee maybe a month. Yeah. So a little more senior. So they gave me an assistant, and I became the chief pot washer. And then, wow, I've really arrived now. I've been given a responsibility. And maybe I got a bit puffed up. I can't remember exactly. I wouldn't be surprised. But after some time, some more experience in Krishna consciousness, you can be put in charge of not just one assistant pot washer, but 100 devotees or more. And because you've made progress in Krishna consciousness, then you will not at all be thinking that, you're now someone important, etc. But like Srila Prabhupada, you may have read Srila Prabhupada was in Sweden at, what was the name of the university? Anyway, one university in one town in Sweden, and Prabhupada was making a presentation to the students, and he made a presentation which included some things about Varnashram and how there are four levels. There are four levels from Sudra, like that. Sudra Vaishya, Kshatriya Brahman, or Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. There are four types of levels. And the Brahmins are the highest level. And one, what would you say, anyway, sort of slightly aggressive student said that, I suppose, what level are you on? I suppose you're on the highest level. Anyway, said like that. But Srila Prabhupada, just being such an extraordinary, in our experience, certainly unique devotee, Srila Prabhupada answered, no, I'm on the lowest level because I'm the servant of all the others. And Prabhupada also expressed himself in that way on a few other occasions and elaborated a little more that he took himself to be on the lowest level because he's serving the others by giving them Krishna consciousness and looking after their Krishna consciousness and educating them in Krishna consciousness. In this way, he's serving. And when you're serving someone, it means you're on a lower position. So, yes. So anyway, this happens as devotees progress. What was a challenge one time becomes just nothing, just completely taken in the devotee's stride later. Yes. So, and this, of course, the thing is, and this is a very important point, that when we talk about a test, if it doesn't actually test you, if it doesn't actually push you into a situation where it really is a challenge, then it's not a test. It's just, it's just something, but it's not a test. A test means, more or less, you're getting pushed to your limits, or something like that. Some limit, or all limits, or otherwise, what's the point of using the term test? Then it's just another event in your life. But test means a test that you've got to really apply yourself and beg for mercy. And if you do that, then benefit will be there, betterment will be there for you. It'll help you improve. Even if you don't do well, apparently, in dealing with the testing situation, but at least if you apply yourself and try to do your best and pray, at the very least you'll come out at the end having learned something of value, which in the future will equip you for dealing better with some other type of situation. We've mentioned before our God brother, the late Tribhuvanath Prabhu, a very amazing devotee. He asked Srila Prabhupada one time, will Krishna ever give you a test which you just will not be able to pass, and therefore as a result you'll sort of fall down or just lose your Krishna consciousness? And Srila Prabhupada answered that no, Krishna will never give you such a test. Even if you're not successful, on the surface and in executing what was to be executed, but at least if you're Krishna conscious, you'll learn. And by learning, you'll progress. This is Krishna consciousness. So even Prabhupada, he had to undergo, as we've been reading about Prabhupada's earlier days as a preacher, as a full-time preacher. Prabhupada went to Jhansi, and if you were following the reading we were doing, then it's clear that Prabhupada went to Jhansi, and in Jhansi, in terms of the immediate situation in Jhansi, he was not successful. he lost the facility, and in the end he felt, I'm just going. And he went somewhere else. So, but Srila Prabhupada, throughout he remained determined, he remained enthusiastic, and he remained fixed in the understanding that he should keep on preaching. Krishna will be merciful, things will develop, and he never became demotivated or depressed. Did I ever read to you what Srila Prabhupada said about his dealings with his God brothers, depression? Don't be depressed. Anyway, it's probably another thing I won't be able to find. But Srila Prabhupada made the point that, here we are, look at this. This is a letter to Guru Das, August 23rd, 1972. Please accept my blessings. I'm in due receipt of your letter, and I've noted the contents carefully. Do not be depressed. All along, my God brothers gave me only depression, repression, compression, but I continued strong in my duty. So never mind there's some discouragement. Continue with your work in full enthusiastic Krishna consciousness attitude of service. Yeah. So, there's so much we can learn from Prabhupada. And this is why it's really important. I mean, it's important, of course, to read the books and hear the classes of Prabhupada's and learn like that. But it's also so important to learn from the example of Srila Prabhupada in terms of his practical activities in all sorts of situations. Just all sorts of situations. And how he responded and reacted or just acted in those different situations. And therefore, reading these biographical books about Srila Prabhupada, it's really important, because Srila Prabhupada is founder Acharya. He's not, you could say, he's not simply founder Pracharya, if you understand what that means. Achar, there's achar and prachar. Achar means activity, and prachar means preaching or what you speak. And we know in Chaitanya Charitamrita there's famous dialogue between Sanatana Goswami and Haridas Thakur, in which Sanatana Goswami is glorifying Haridas Thakur. And he says, some people, they speak very nicely, but their actions are not so good. And some people, their actions are very nice, but they don't speak so nicely. But you are perfect in both, your actions and what you speak. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami said, therefore, you are the spiritual master of the whole world, Jagat Guru. So Srila Prabhupada particularly, and it's a custom but in our line, but he specifically adopted the term founder Acharya, which means the founder and the person who teaches by his activities, Achar. Yeah. by his activities. Of course, speaking, you could say, was one of his activities. But in another sense, Acharya means one who teaches by his activities, by his example. Yeah. So to really learn the examples of Srila Prabhupada, one has to acquaint oneself with his activities. And therefore these biographical books are just so valuable. Inestimably valuable. So Lord Shiva, he's showing the example himself that he just didn't get caught up in this back and forth and cursing and counter-cursing and who can give the heaviest curse. You cursed me, but I'll out-curse you. I was reading yesterday, I think it was Srila Jiva Goswami's comment on one of these verses somewhere around here. And he says there that all of these curses that we've been reading the last so many days, they've all come true. Yeah. And it's because of these curses that certain situations are prevailing in human society today. That the Brahmin community has gone down and the Shivites, at least so many of the Shivites have become sort of atheistic like Mayavadis and things like this. Yeah. So Lord Shiva, he could have got caught up in it, but he didn't. And when he saw what was happening, because, to make these curses, it takes just a matter of seconds. A curse can be uttered in 2 or 3 seconds. So it's probably like 20 or 30 seconds has passed in the course of these last 10 or so verses or whatever. And Lord Shiva, though, seeing how it's going, he's decided to set the example and just get out. And of course, when he went, Sanuga, his disciples or his followers, they went with him. And in this way, he stopped that whole inauspicious situation from getting worse. In that way, by leaving the situation, he stopped the problem becoming worse. So we need this type of example. We really need this type of example. And then we need to try to set such examples in the different situations we face. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? Oh, okay. Okay.
I was wondering, is there not something that can be done to counteract the curses, the effects of the curses which are still going on?
Is there anything that can be done to counteract the curses? Well, yes. First of all, on a personal level, if you act in the proper ways, then you'll become a Brahmin, an actual Brahmin, and not one of these Kali Yuga sort of poor excuses or so-called Brahmins. And then by your influence, others will also be improved. And in due course, as Prabhupada said on a few occasions, that for 10,000 years, there'll be a golden age. Yeah. And all these crazy curses. You know, the Shivites will become corrected. The Brahmins will become real Vaishnav Brahmins. Yeah. I think that's really the answer.
I also just wanted to check my understanding about the statement that an initiated disciple is meant to know everything. Is it because they are connected to their spiritual master who is communicating with Krishna and Krishna is, he is...
An initiated disciple is supposed to know everything. Well, I mean, that's kind of an esoteric type of subtle idea. You know, one thing is that the disciple, and Prabhupada specifically said, the disciple cannot know everything that the spiritual master knows. But the disciple can know enough by the grace of the spiritual master to become fully Krishna conscious. So, you know, we are now the first generation and second generation, and there's some third generation after Prabhupada in terms of being disciplic generations. When we get to, you know, the 100th generation, if every generation knows less than their spiritual master, I think you get the idea. But still, it'll be enough by the grace of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So, yeah, I would take it that if that's there, it's in the sense not of becoming sarvagya like Krishna, actual omniscience, but by Krishna's grace and the spiritual master's grace, knowing enough. And if there's ever a real need, if the devotee is really sincere enough, if there's really a need to know something, Krishna will reveal it. How does that sound? Something like that. Okay.
Prabhupada, thank you for a wonderful class. You mentioned that Krishna doesn't give you anything that you cannot handle.
Yeah, sort of.
So what happens if a person in the previous life have committed some like heinous acts and then comes forward, going forward? How does Krishna meter out the karmic situation, the karma situation?
Well, if it's just okay, yeah.
Does this apply to both the devotees and non-devotees? And then if so, is the karma cut to size, meaning that it looks at the person's individual capacity?
Yeah. If we're just talking about karma, you know, I have again another story I've told on a few occasions. I have one godbrother who I haven't seen for years. He is Israeli, Jewish, Israeli. But he's, at least the last time I saw him, he was a really good devotee. And there was a war called the 6-Day War. It was sort of the very late 60s or something like that, between Israel and a few of the Palestinian Arabic nations around them. And so he was just a teenager, but he got called up. into the army, and they put him on a machine gun. Yeah. And so anyway, then he became a devotee a few years later, and he met with Prabhupada. And he asked Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, this was the situation there. I was on a machine gun. I killed many people. What should I do? And Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna. And that was it. Chant Hare Krishna. So if we're talking about on the material level, then there's a great difference between what happens to the devotees and their karma and the non-devotees and their karma. The non-devotees will just get all their karma. It'll just be like a massive festival of karma. Whoa. Yeah. And but for the devotees, Krishna takes the devotees' karma. Mokshayishami mashuchaha. I'll take all your reactions. Do not fear. And Krishna takes your karma, and then when he feels he wants to test you, or something like that, he'll give you a little bit of your karma. Yeah. But not for the devotees, as Prabhupada told Tribhuvanath Prabhu, and Tribhuvanath told me personally this, that Krishna may test quite intensely, but if we surrender and really take shelter, at the least we'll be able to come through without losing our Krishna consciousness. And if we're really been sincere and tried our best, we'll get realization and understanding which will help us further. But for the non-devotees, no. Sooner or later they'll be crushed into powder. Oh yeah, by their karma. Is that okay? Hare Krishna.
Sometimes we meet devotees that would have a lot of appreciation for Srila Prabhupada, and we understand he's like an important personality in the Guru Parampara system. But they find it difficult to like take shelter of one of Srila Prabhupada's, disciples in the mood of initiation.
Right.
They feel like we are belittling Srila Prabhupada's position by taking initiation.
Sure. You are talking about a confused devotee who doesn't understand Prabhupada sufficiently, actually, because Prabhupada instructed on numerous occasions, and it's in black and white, it's just there to be seen and read and accepted, that Prabhupada wanted, actually he wanted all of his disciples to become spiritual masters and continue the parampara and give initiation. Prabhupada specifically wanted it. And so if a devotee really, seriously thinks as you have expressed, then it means, it would depend, but it could mean that they just haven't studied Prabhupada sufficiently. Yeah. Or, if they have, that they don't accept Prabhupada. They have a type of acceptance, but it's not a real acceptance of Prabhupada. So, yeah, they're in a sort of, dangerous condition actually, because in the name of Srila Prabhupada, they're kind of, you could even say offending him, or at least not accepting him and not believing him, or just not taking him seriously enough to really acquaint themselves, really study Prabhupada and what he said in general, and at least particularly on this particular point. So it's not a matter of belittling Prabhupada at all. It's a matter, what happens is, if devotees are nicely initiated, then through the relationship with the spiritual master, they come to understand Prabhupada better, because the spiritual master pretty much inevitably will really understand Prabhupada a lot better and will regularly give Prabhupada to them. So through the relationship, they'll come closer to Prabhupada than even they really could just by their own efforts. Yeah. So it sounds like a contamination, actually. And there's a verse, is it a verse or a statement, that anyone who will not, it's one thing not being qualified, and therefore, one cannot be initiated or cannot accept, really take shelter of a spiritual master. That's one thing. But it's one thing if a person cannot, but if a person refuses, will not, then I'd have to look it up, whether it's the actual Shastra itself, or whether it's Prabhupada saying it. But the statement is, such a person cannot go back to Godhead and cannot really make progress if they will not, if they refuse. So, of course, people may have doubts about whatever, but whatever doubts, if there are doubts about the situation, the devotee should bring up the doubts and not just sort of hold on to the doubts. Yeah. Because doubts are like demons. And if, there are Ritvik devotees who feel like that. But it's sort of demoniac, and at best, it's a really, really serious misconception. And at worst, it's kind of, demoniac. And you see those devotees who really staunchly hold such ideas, they actually start manifesting like demoniacally cynical and critical mentalities. How's that for a straight answer? Too straight. And, yeah.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
A few days ago, you were speaking on Nishta from Madhuri Kadambini, on there's two types of steadiness. But what's the definition of steadiness? Is it, as you say, that Nishta, does the mind runs away on the material things, and how is it linked to the third verse of the Sasastika? Is that kind of linked?
Well, just in and of itself, Nishta as defined there in Madhuri Kadambini means steadiness in bodily devotional activities, verbal devotional activities and mental devotional activities. That's the definition that he gives. Always engaged, and whatever talking is going on, it's at least Krishna related, if not actually about Krishna directly. And just thinking about Krishna, thinking about serving like that. And what was next? What?
Is it linked to the
Third verse? Well, it's linked. I'd say it's linked to all the verses of Shikshastakam, really, but it's linked in the sense that that verse is saying that if a devotee is very humble in those different ways, then the devotee will be able to chant all the time. But also what's said is that if a devotee is not fixed in humility like that, then the devotee will not be able to chant all the time. In other words, the devotee will not be able to remain fixed in those three sort of perspectives of devotional service. The devotee will inevitably be forced by his or her mind to deviate, at least to some degree. It may only be temporary, but at least to some degree, like consciously deviate by decision. But, there, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, speaking about asakti, which is 2 levels higher, says that the devotee on the level of asakti will still sometimes find that his or her mind wanders off. Not consciously, like, I'm going to think about, something material. But just the mind just sort of drifts away. But then the devotee on the level of asakti realizes and just easily pulls the mind back just like that. Because such a devotee is very close to perfection. So on the level of nishta, it's sort of like, namabas, or the clearing stage of chanting, is related with nishta. It's very much related with nishta, because the clearing stage means that, it's not the offensive stage. That's the first thing. It's not the offensive stage. Means there aren't actual offenses in the chanting. But it's not the pure stage. So it means that the propensity or the tendency that you might commit an offense if you're not careful. On the level of Shuddhanam, the propensity or the possibility that you might commit an offense is not really there. Therefore, it's pure chanting. If there was some possibility you might sometimes drift off, then it's not pure chanting. So clearing stage is an interesting stage because it's in between. Not offensive, but not actually pure. And so it means that the tendency or the possibility of offending means, some sort of pressure from within, from one's conditioning to maybe do something wrong is there, but you're not giving into it. Therefore, it's the clearing stage. And it's not offensive. And if, you're sort of on that level, but sometimes you commit offenses, then you're sort of on the edge of the real clearing stage. It's a little mixed with at least a little bit of the offensive stage.
Thank you very
Get
much,
the
Maharaj.
idea? It's interesting.
Very nice.
That's the clearing stage. There's no offenses. Otherwise, it's the offensive stage, or some version of the offensive stage. But still there's some pressure, the mind, and you got to keep on your toes and keep chanting properly. And then you can chant always and keep engaged always.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. And I would say, and I'm really sure, that if devotees get initiated by current day bona fide spiritual masters, I would say Srila Prabhupada will be very pleased. And he'll give his blessings. He'll give his blessings rather than feel offended by that devotee. Yeah. Haribol. Thank you for the association.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
There's a pin there.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Devi. Oh, the skin. Was it you?